Hey guys, it's Robin, RsIslandCrafts, and welcome to my craft room. Today I'm going to show you another quick project that you can use up little bits of fabric. If you ever had one of those jars, whether it's pickles or olives or something that you just can't quite open, you need that little extra help, well, I'm going to show you today how to make a jar opener. It's going to be really simple. We are going to use shelf liner. You could pick this up at most any stores like Walmart and such like that, or you can find them at the hardware stores and the dollar stores and any variety of places that you can usually find it. It's not that difficult to find. Sometimes it comes on a roll, sometimes it just comes into sheets that are already pre-cut. Mine came on a roll. I was all excited about cutting it into my 6-inch squares that I went ahead and cut all of the roll except for this one piece. Now mine came in a roll, as I said, and it was 12 inches wide by 60 inches long. So to make the best use of this, I'm going to cut mine into 6-inch squares. If yours is a little larger, or you would prefer for your jar opener to be a bit larger, you can go ahead and cut them into 7-inch squares if you prefer. But I went and tested this out and I found that a 6-inch square, it fits nicely in your hand and it'll easily fit over a large pickle jar. And then the only thing else I used is I used some quilting cotton, some basic cotton fabric. You can go ahead and use some flannel if you want, or you can always use like an old t-shirt or maybe an old button-up dress shirt. You can really use this out of any type of fabric that you can get your hands onto, because we're just using it on this side to make it pretty. Because let's face it, you could just use a piece of shelf liner and open up the jar and it would be perfectly fine. But we want to have something that looks nice in our kitchen. So I'm going to take one 6-inch square of shelf liner and I'm going to grab two 6-inch squares of fabric. I have this fun fabric here with pigs parachuting down. If you were using a fabric that came into a larger print like I have here, I have a barn with a couple cows and a rooster. So when I went out and fussy cut this 6-inch square, I had everything nice, but then it left these random pieces like this. So it's okay to use this random piece. Your fabrics do not have to match. You can use a solid piece of fabric, because what we're going to do is we're going to use this to go behind our shelf liner. So you're going to be able to see through it, but you're not really going to be able to discern any particular pattern. So I can see what's here. I can see that there's hills and a barn and silo and cows and stuff, but it's not as obvious as this. So I'm going to use this for my second side. That is going to be the pretty side that we're really going to be able to see. Now, if you decide that you don't need to have a jar opener, you can go ahead and make the same thing and use this as a coaster, because the shelf liner will keep your coaster from sliding around on the table. So we're going to go ahead and use our flying pigs here. If you have fabric that definitely has an up and down, a directional print to like this, you can go ahead and make sure that when you put it in, that this one is one way, and when you flip it over, that this one's the other way. But as I said, you're really not going to see that print that much, so you can kind of go willy-nilly and just put this together in any direction that you would like. So I have my one right side up. I'm going to put my shelf liner right down on top of it. If your shelf liner happens to obviously have a wrong side and a right side, mine doesn't. This is just basically a bunch of little silicone that has been painted on here, like wiggled on. You can go either way. Mine is very noticeable that it has an up and down pattern, so I can decide to have it up and down or side by side. It doesn't really matter. This is very lenient, so it's a good project for beginners. It's a quick project for craft fairs and different gift-giving occasions like that. I'm going to take my second piece of fabric and I'm going to put it face down so that the right sides of both of my fabrics are actually touching my shelf liner. Kind of get everything lined up the best you can, and I'm going to head and use some of my clips here. If you don't have clips, you can go ahead and use pins. Even as an experienced sewer, I decided that it was a good idea to go ahead and use the clips because things tend to shift around a little bit with this shelf liner. And using the pins or clips will go ahead and keep everything in place for you. I have my machine set at a 1/4 inch for our seam allowance. I'm going to pop it up to about a 2.6, 3.0. Sewing through the shelf liner is really simple. It has a lot of holes in it, so it's not difficult to do. It's kind of like a rubbery gel type situation, so the needle goes through it no problem. A lot of times it's just going to go ahead and go through the holes that are listed in here anyways. I'm going to leave myself a little bit of an opening. We are using a 6-inch square, so we are limited to where we are. We don't want to go too close to the ends, so about 2 inches, leave an opening here. I'm going to back stitch here, and then I'm going to stitch all the way around until I get back to here, leaving my opening, and then back stitch. I am using a regular standard needle, a universal, so you don't have to change your needle. This foot is just a standard foot because right now we are on the fabric part, fabric on the top and fabric on the bottom, so it's not going to cause any issue. And around we go. Just remember to leave your opening. If you're using clips all the way around, you can go ahead and put a pin here to remind yourself. Or if you're using pins, go ahead and put 2 pins here and 2 pins there. That'll just remind you that you need to go ahead and leave that opening. If you forget to use the opening, you just go ahead and take your seam ripper and remove some of those stitches and then go ahead and just move on from there. Now we're going to turn this right sides out, and since we're going to have these square corners here, we want to trim a little bit of that excess fabric out of the corners just to allow us to have a nice corner without too much bulk. Since we're using the shelf liner, it's going to kind of be bulky anyways, but we're going to go ahead and get rid of some of it. I want to go about 1/8 of an inch from the stitching line on the corner. You just want to be careful that you're not cutting through that stitching line on the corners. Trim my threads. Now I tried stitching these, my first 2 testers. I tried stitching one with the rubber side up and the other with the rubber side down, and I was really surprised that the one with the rubber side down actually went through the machine easier. I thought it was going to get hung up on my bed of my machine here, but no, I had more problems with it getting stuck to the foot of my machine, my presser foot. They do make some ones for working with vinyl and stuff like that that might actually glide well for you, but if you don't have that, you can easily just go ahead and do it here. When I stitched it with the shelf liner up, I found myself having to kind of hold it tightly and give it a little bit of, I'm not forcing it through my machine, but just helping guide it through. You might try a walking foot to see if that's easier, if one of your machines comes with that. Now I'm going to go ahead and start where my hole is, just that way I know I've closed it up right in the beginning and I don't have to worry about it. I'm going to start a little bit past it. I'm going to do a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance this time. I'm going to top stitch around it. It's going to hold everything together nicely, and it's going to go ahead and close up my hole. I'm going to stick with my 2.6 on my stitch length. Your sewing machine has feed dogs underneath. Those are the little ridges that are pulling your fabric through your machine as you're stitching. So it is holding onto the shelf liner and pulling it through. If you're finding you're getting a little stuck over here, you can just go ahead and hold this up a little bit. The only part that really needs to matter is what is directly underneath your needle. So if you hold it up and keep that part from sticking, the rest will go ahead and glide through easily. And there you go. Everything lays nice and flat. If you look at this one, you can see how the corners are kind of sticking up and the shelf liner is kind of bubbling a little bit. This is the one, as I said, that I did with the shelf liner facing up. This one I did with the shelf liner facing the bed of my machine, facing down. So I was looking at the fabric, just as we did with this one. And you can just see the difference between the two of these and how they look. I know it's kind of hard to see with the shelf liner, but this one is all wavy like this, and you can see my corners are sticking up, whereas this one, everything is laying nice and flat. As I mentioned, these are really quick little things that you can make for teachers' gifts, for at the office, for the ladies in the cafeteria, for just about anyone who you are giving gifts to. I'm sure most of us, if not all, struggle at one time or another trying to open up a jar. I think if you were doing one of those gifts that you put everything in a basket, like if you're going to make a pasta dinner for someone, that you can go ahead and put one of these in, get a special fabric that has something to do with whatever you're making, whether it's a Mexican meal or if it's some type of a movie night, or you're just making kitchen gadgets. Use something similar to this for like the kitchen, or something that might, if you get lucky enough to find something that has pasta on it. Something for one of your Elvis fans. That it would be good to put in the baskets like that. If you want to just make a multiple gift and give out several different things. Or as I mentioned, just go ahead and sell them at a craft fair. I'm going to be listing all of these. It is currently March 2020. If you see this later and you're interested in one of these, I mean, you can check the shop. You never know what might still be in there. Or you can always ask me. I might still have the fabric if you want something specific. But these are going to be going in my Art Fire shop. It is listed in the description below this video. Or just go to Art Fire and look at RsIslandCrafts. So I hope you found this tutorial useful, and I hope you go ahead and make some of these jar openers for yourself and for friends and family. Bye!